How you doing, guys? Here I am at St James's Park, and it's not deadline day, but it is deadline day. What a ridiculous 48, 72 hours on Tyneside as Newcastle look to try and balance the books ahead of the PSR accounting deadline tonight at midnight. Now, there's been a lot said over the last few weeks that Newcastle need to try and raise some funds to deal with their PSR situation. It's been played down in certain areas, but it's been there for all to see over these last couple of days when Newcastle have looked to do deals, to sell players to all sorts of clubs as they try and balance their books and ensure that they don't have a points deduction next season. So I'm going to try and break it down and go through it all, but the feeling from the club was, the overarching feeling was, the last resort was to have a points deduction. Next season is a season that Newcastle want to have a real go. They don't have European football to contend with, and we saw what happened 2 years ago when they did that. They finished fourth, managed to get themselves into the Champions League, got to a cup final. There's a feeling they can do that again because they don't have all these European matches to deal with during the week. Yes, they wanted that, it didn't happen. Okay, it is what it is. So the last thing they wanted was a 6, 8, 10 point deduction to kick off the season and leave them trailing their competitors. So that was the last thing they wanted. So it came to a point where, towards the end of the week, that they were willing to do business really with any player if it meant that they got the money in to deal with the PSR situation. Now, while they didn't want to lose an Anthony Gordon or an Alexander Issac, there was a kind of understanding within the club that if they were not able to sell anyone else, then they might have to do that. That would be almost last resort. Last resort is the points deduction, but just above that was losing one of these players. So look, it was a really, really difficult situation the club were in because they needed to try and find this money, and they needed to find it in a way that was suitable with the manager, the owners, and everyone at the club. And look, I think for Eddie Howe, I think losing someone like Yankuba Minteh was probably a no-brainer. He's not built up a relationship with the player. He hasn't played him before. Yes, he potentially rates him, but I think he would much rather keep a mainstay of the team, an Issac or a Gordon, than lose a Yankuba Minteh. So I think that was a fairly obvious one for them to do. Although the player looks like he's going to be good, his data is good, his stats are good, and that's the reason why Brighton have come in for him, and that's why he's going there. I think for Newcastle, it was the lesser of two evils, losing someone like him compared to one of the big star names. And hopefully you guys understand and appreciate that as well. I think you do, going by some of the comments on social media. So that is why a deal was agreed for Yankuba Minteh to go to Brighton. As you all know, £33 million. Great business for Newcastle when you look at it, given the fact he's never played a first team game. Look, he might turn out to be an absolute world beater, but at this moment in time, for a guy who's never played a Premier League game, I think £33 million is good business for Newcastle, and it filled a large chunk of the £60 million hole that they needed to fill. So what else did they do? I tweeted last night saying, look, they're still active, they still need to sell another player. Could it be Callum Wilson? Could it be Elliot Anderson? Could it yet be an Anthony Gordon or Alexander Issac? Now, with the news this morning that it's Elliot Anderson, that to me ends any notion that Issac or Gordon will go this transfer window. So Elliot Anderson, as I'm sure you're all aware, is currently, as we stand this afternoon, what are we now, 2 o'clock in the afternoon here, is been undergoing his medical since this morning down in Nottingham. He was actually in Nottingham last night, spent the night in a hotel in Nottingham. So too, by the way, did Yankuba Minteh, because he didn't know where he was going last night. Forest were in for him, Everton were still showing interest, and Brighton were showing interest. So he was positioned in the middle, waiting to find out what was happening, alongside Anderson in a hotel in Nottingham. But he got the news last night that he was going to Brighton, and off he popped there. Anderson remained in Nottingham, as I say, going through his medical this morning, and he will complete a move to Nuno Espirito Santo's side for £35 million. Now, a lot of people this morning saying to me, wow, how have we got £35 million for Elliot Anderson? I personally think, yes, it's good business, but I think it's probably his value. Like, if you get £33 million for Minteh, who's never played a Premier League game, I think Anderson's worth £35 million. He's played a number of games, he's looked impressive. I thought he was coming on strong towards the end of the season, and I know Eddie Howe saw him as a big part of Newcastle's future. He reluctantly had to lose him, or he was going to lose, and as I say, a Gordon or an Issac. So it was a lesser of two evils. I know the manager isn't happy about losing him, but he knew he had to lose someone. I don't think Anderson wanted to leave. He's a Newcastle fan, boyhood supporter of the club, loved it here, but I think the terms on offer from Forest were favourable to him. I think the financial package was a good one, and I think when Newcastle have come to him and said, look, we kind of need you to go here to help us, I don't think he was going to be someone who was going to cause a problem for the club either. So Forest massively helping Newcastle out with that. Brighton massively helping Newcastle out with Minty. And Newcastle in turn have helped Forest out. And they've taken in the goalkeeper, Odysseas Vlachodimos, the 30-year-old Greek international. I don't think it's a lot of money. I think it's probably around about £4 or £5 million. He'll come in, he'll be the number 3 goalkeeper behind Nick Pope and AN other, whether that is James Trafford or someone else, we'll have to wait and see. But they needed a replacement for Loris Karius, and I think Vlachodimos will be that man. Newcastle helping Nottingham Forest with their PSR situation, because Nottingham Forest have helped Newcastle by taking Elliot Anderson off their hands. I can't believe we're saying that, because the club don't want to lose Anderson, of course they don't, but the necessity has been that he has to go so that they don't get a points deduction. So hopefully that explains to you. There's a lot of people asking me, why are Newcastle signing this goalkeeper? He's not going to play. Is he going to be competing with Nick Pope? No, I don't think so. I think he's going to be the third choice goalkeeper, replacement for Karius. Newcastle, it's a little bit like, we'll scratch your back because Forest have scratched theirs, and that's what's happened with that situation. They've done really well to extract the money from Brighton. But remember, Brighton have got loads of money. They've sold so many players over the last few years. They don't have PSR trouble whatsoever down there on the south coast, so they can go out and spend £33 million on Yankuba Minty. I'm not sure if it's a structured deal or it's up front. I know there's no add-ons on that, but this is a deal that Newcastle have done well to get that sort of money out of them. Yes, they could have had £40 million from Lyon last week, but the player didn't want to go there. The player made it clear he wanted to play in the Premier League this season. He would have been up for Everton, he would have been up for Forest, hence why he stayed in a hotel in Forest in Nottingham last night. But it's Brighton. He's probably, when you look at the 3 clubs, he's probably got the best deal there, because, you know, Brighton, of those 3 clubs, are probably the one that's pushing highest up the Premier League table. So that's where we are at the moment. People still asking me, is Issac going to go? Is Gordon going to go? I don't think they are. I'm pretty certain these guys aren't going to go now. That's why Newcastle have lost Minty and Anderson reluctantly. These guys will be here at Newcastle next season. It's true that there were talks, verbal discussions between Liverpool and Newcastle over Gordon. Newcastle wanted Kwanzaa as part of the deal, and Liverpool balked when they heard that. They said, no, we don't want to lose Jarell Kwanzaa, and they kind of walked away from any discussions. And they were initial conversations. I don't know how far the situation got, but it's true that there was something between the clubs there, and that's because Newcastle were getting desperate. Same too with Alexander Issac. There was contact from Chelsea at 2 points last week, on Wednesday and then again on Friday. They were keen on Issac. Newcastle, I think if the right offer came in, if it was a huge amount of money, I think they would have sold, because every player's got his price in a world of PSR, as Eddie Howe said before. I think probably £125 million plus he would have gone. I think if they'd offered less than that, it would have been difficult for Newcastle to deal. However, had they not sold Anderson and Minty today, and Chelsea came in this morning and offered 110, 115 million for Issac, they would have had a big decision to make. They really would have, and that is how the situation has happened. It's been a frantic couple of days in Tyneside, because Newcastle have known they've had to raise that money. Mission accomplished, it seems. And while we could see the likes of Kieran Trippier, Callum Wilson, Miguel Almiron go this window, there's not a necessity to get them out the door right now, because they've managed to do the business with Anderson and Minty. So hopefully that explains the situation to you guys. It's been carnage. It's felt like transfer deadline day. In fact, it feels busier than transfer deadline day, because normally on transfer deadline day I'm stood here saying nothing's happening, and things have been happening. So it's been a little bit wild. Leave your comments below if you've got any questions as to what I've said. I'll try and answer them in my comments, and well, looking forward to getting back to the serenity of the transfer window now. Okay guys, speak to you soon. Cheers.